asked to share tonight a little bit about August 7th and the safety levy, mental health levy that's on the ballot in Stark County. And so what I want to do is, and what I was asked to do is just give a little perspective of what we're facing in our community and in Stark County as a whole. So that's what I'd like to do. I'm going to just throw a few numbers at you, but more importantly is just the impact that this has. And I believe what we're going to talk about tonight is probably the most important issue that we're facing right now as a community, not just in education, but I believe our community at large. This past year, everything changed. Since August of 2017, there have been 15 suicides in Stark County, and of school-aged children. And there have been 25 total student deaths in Stark County. And unfortunately, in Plain Local, we had a car wreck with two brothers that passed away at the wreck. So that really changed everything as far as what we're dealing with, what our kids and our families and our community are dealing with. To give you a little perspective, since 1980, Stark County was averaging 1 to 2 suicides a year. And so the question then that everybody has is why 15? Why so many? Why the spike in everything in all of the school districts? Last year as a whole in Stark County, and these numbers, when you type them, it's one thing, but when you start to read them, it's like, okay. Last year in Stark County, 199 kids, okay, ages 15 to 17, went to Altman Hospital for mental health issues, including suicide ideation and suicide attempts. Okay, 199. 72 of those were kids from Plain Local. So that's the Altman. To Akron Children's Hospital. And when I say Akron Children's, that could be the inpatient, it could be partial hospitalization, or it could be an intensive outpatient treatment for mental health issues. 1,344 kids in Stark County. And 493 of those kids were from Plain Local. So when we talk about the impact that has and what our families are going through, what our kids are facing, it's pretty extreme. When all of this took place, the Center for Disease Control got involved, CDC, and they were asked by the Stark County Health Department and the Ohio Health Department to come to Stark County and say, hey, let's try to find out what's going on. We gave a survey, and school districts could opt out if they wanted to. But most school districts gave a survey to students in grades 7 through 12, because below that, some of the content was pretty sensitive. So kids in grades 7 through 12. And what we learned was that 9% of the students surveyed at Plain have attempted suicide at one time. 9%. We have about 6,100 kids. Okay? And those are all kids that may come from Jackson, Lake, or Hoover into our career tech programs. So 6,100, not all at the same time, but at some point. 10.5% of kids that were surveyed at Plain, again, 7 through 12, endorsed suicide ideation with a plan during last school year. And the highest percentage was females in 12th grade. And that
Seniors. Yeah.
That kind of shocked me when you start, thinking about that and think about kids, So you wonder then about their thought process. You wonder about their hope. So I believe we have to give kids hope. If nothing else, we got to give them hope. So when you look at that, and you also look at this past school year, there were a lot of threats in schools. And as you know, there were several school shootings around our nation. Ohio is number 2 in the nation this past school year of school threats. We were number 2. And I will tell you, and Mr. Halkias will tell you because we talked a lot, we were dealing with that almost daily. And it was the copycats. It was social media. Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. And these things are, people post something and it's shared 50, 100, 150 times, and sooner or later, then by the time the real story got to me, it had been inflated so much you really didn't know what was true. You were trying then to back it up and work through it. We work day and night, I will tell you this. We would get a threat, and we would immediately talk to the Stark County Sheriff's Office, because that's the sheriffs. They work with our schools, and they would be out at homes 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Because what we wanted to make sure is that the next day, as soon as school started, that the schools were safe. So talking to parents, talking to kids, whatever we needed to do, all hours of the day and night. And I will tell you that Stark County Sheriff's Office has been nothing short of amazing. Sheriff Meyer, Deputy Smith, he's our school resource officer. They were amazing. But it's social media, it's the copycats, and a lot of this is through our media, everything is glorified. So for our kids, whether it's on the side of suicide or on the side of a school threat, they see what these kids, they're being publicized, they're being talked about, their faces are over the paper or the news channel, and then they say, I want to be him or her. And it's creating lots and lots of problems in our community. So the CDC, with that information, we're taking that now and we're trying to dig through it. And then we're going to start our school year off by talking to our staff and our parents about this is what the kids said. 85% of our kids completed the survey. That's a lot. That's a really high percentage. I was happy with that. And in order to be part of that 85%, you had to complete the whole survey. You couldn't skip around. So that was a good percentage of our kids that took it seriously to answer the questions.
Now, does everyone know what the CDC is? We tend to kind of throw acronyms around. The CDC is the Centers for Disease Control. It's a national organization that came to Stark County because they recognize we have a huge problem here in the county.
So our belief is, and part of the push for the August 7th levy, okay? There's two factors on August 7th, safety and security and mental health. All right. So because of everything that was taking place, there was a county task force that was created. So it's important to know who was on that task force. It wasn't just educators. We had FBI, we had Sheriff Meyer, Homeland Security, and many law enforcement departments, Canal Fulton, North Canton PD. Those people were part of this because we needed some help. Like, what should we be looking at? What should we be talking to our community about doing? They made some recommendations. They said, one, the first recommendation they made was having additional law enforcement at the buildings. That was the first one. Second one was mental health. I believe they go hand in hand. I don't think there's a whole lot of separation. I think they go together. The third was metal detection wands. So it's kind of like when you guys know what those are. When somebody wands you at an event or something to see if you have something on you that you shouldn't. They talked about a system that would give access, video access, to first responders, fire, police, EMS. So if there's an issue at Glen Oak High School, they pull up to it and they can see on their screens in their car or whatever what's going on. And we have that. And it does work very well. A way to allow access for people to come into a building. So if John would come into a building, that he would have to give his ID. They would swipe the ID, and then we immediately know if John had, let's say, an outstanding warrant. Let's say they were a sex offender. So to know who's in your building immediately. And all of our buildings, to get into them, you have to be buzzed in to get in. Okay. They also talked about a curriculum called Sandy Hook Promise. I think we all know what Sandy Hook. There's a tragedy in Connecticut when the shooter got in and killed multiple children at an elementary. The gentleman who runs Sandy Hook Promise, his daughter was next door to the room where the shooting took place. And he has started this nonprofit. It's a curriculum and it's a reporting system, and it's all free, that connects first responders, law enforcement, to the school immediately upon, let's say there's a threat. It's also a curriculum schools can follow for bullying, those types of things. Training for bus drivers and bus aides. Our bus drivers are the first ones who see our kids in the morning. They know immediately what's going on. You can tell when they walk on the bus. So how do we train them what to look for, what to do? If there's an issue, what do you do? Because they are truly, if you talk about a first responder, our drivers are. And they also talked about training for kids for this, they call it digital citizenship, which is basically how do you use a computer the correct way? What are the ethics? How do you use social media? What do you do? And right now, our kids struggle with that. Our adults struggle. Right?
Why don't I take the next part, which I know people always have questions about, the two things that they did not recommend that we do. The first one is metal detectors. And I get more questions about, well, why don't the schools just put in metal detectors? You go to an Indians game, you go to the Cavs game, they've got the metal detectors now, or Browns game, whatever event you go to, they have those now. But logistically, when you look at a school building, which is a public building, versus somewhere that you pay to get in, where the crowd's all coming in pretty much at once, it's a logistical nightmare, plus all the doors that we have. There isn't just one entrance to the school. The other issue is arming school employees. And I'll tell you what the position of the Ohio School Boards Association is, and it happens to be my position as well. That's a local decision. The voters and the community where people reside should make that decision for themselves. This isn't a one-size-fits-all answer to what's going on. I've talked to superintendents in school districts that are in very rural areas where everybody has a gun and everybody carries a gun, and maybe that's okay for their community, but maybe it's not okay for the plain local community. When Brent met with those people, they do not suggest arming school employees. And quite frankly, I'm not in favor of it in our community, but I'm one school board member. I'm not all five. But I don't think that would happen in Plain, and I don't know what would happen in other districts as far as arming staff. There are some districts in Stark County who are doing it.
And they really talked about arming, if you decide, if a school board would decide to arm teachers, that they would have to go through training set forth by the Stark County Sheriff's Office, some very specific training. And, at the end of the day, when John and I have talked about this, and, you all think about your own kids or relatives you have, how do you, in a time of crisis and that training that's needed, how do you make that decision? And how do you know, if there's a lot of kids or a lot of adults, how do you know? And I believe that's a heck of a responsibility to put on the teacher.
And that's why our feeling in Plain is that we bring in professionals. We hire more deputies to be part of our security in our buildings so that there are people who have the training and the background. Heaven forbid a school employee has a weapon and an innocent child gets hurt or killed because they don't have the training or the background. That's our biggest concern.
So, what are we doing, right? I'm going to first start with the Plain Local, and then I'll move over to the county. As far as Plain Local, next year we're going to be adding 5 additional Stark County Sheriff deputies to our schools. We'll have 2 at the high school, 2 at our middle school, 2 at our intermediate school, and then we're going to have 1 east side, 1 west side for our elementaries. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing that we've done is we've secured a 10-year agreement with Child and Adolescent Behavioral Health to be on-site, to have a full-service office on-site at Glen High School. We believe that's key in all of this. How do we get access and services to our families at a place where they know they can come, they know where it's at, they know where to go. It'd be a separate entrance, and they can go in there either as a family or they can go during the school day, whatever they need. And that office will also service other communities as well. is just going to be located on the campus of the high school. Like I said at the beginning, I believe that's a two-part approach to it with the sheriff deputies and CNA. We have the system I talked about, first responders coming to a building, they can see, they know what's going on. There are now radios in every one of our buildings. They're called Marks radios. And basically what that is if there would be an incident, you click a button and then any first responder, law enforcement that's in the area will get that response and then go to the building that's impacted. No matter where they're at, no matter who they work for, you click a button, boom, they're all there. And that's very, very important. At all of our buildings, we have strobe lights. They're blue strobe lights. And so for our buses, it's a visual for them. If they pull in with kids and they see the blue strobes going off, they pull right out. And what happens when those lights go off, there's an announcement. There's a PA system right next to it that will say, do not come in. So if anybody be walking to the library, if they'd be walking to CNA, they hear that, they get away. Same thing, we have them inside in our gyms. We're going to be putting them in our hallways. And it's that visual for our kids and our adults. Okay, you see those, something's going on, get to shelter or don't come in. We've already secured Sandy Hook Promise. That's that curriculum, that reporting system I talked about. Most people don't notice we do 19 drills a year mandated by the state of Ohio for our kids. And when we went to school, tornado drills were a big thing, right? I mean, it was, I remember. But now for our kids, and it's funny because I talk to my own children, they will come home, they'll say, Dad, we had a lockdown drill. Dad, we had an evacuation drill. Yes. That's a whole different conversation at home than a tornado drill.
For those of us who are older, we remember fallout drills.
Get under your desk.
Get under the desk, but to me, it's alarming and sad because you've got little kids now who have to go through a drill, what to do when there's an active shooter. How sad is that, and how traumatizing is it for young children? And that's why I'm so proud of what we're doing by bringing in child and adolescent services right on campus, because this isn't just about the person who comes in with the gun. It's about preventing that from ever happening by providing mental health services for kids who need it.
And the school, the additional Stark County Sheriff deputies, if anyone knows Officer Chad Smith, Deputy Chad Smith, he's about 6'6", 260. That helps, right? But our kids love him. And they go up to him, even the smallest of kids will go up and talk to him. That's the idea. Let's get our kids talking. If I'm in a uniform, that's okay, go talk to him or her. And that's where we will make the most gains with our kids, because our kids always know what's going on. They know. We just got to find the right people and the right time to get to them. We don't care how they tell us, just tell us. And that's the whole thing with Sandy Hook. See something, say something. Even if it's small, tell us. And so we feel with getting more deputies, it's not about hardening the schools or having somebody stand there with a gun, but it is about, they're visible, yes, but it's also for that little kindergarten to go up to a deputy and say, talk with him or her, maybe about them, maybe about their family, whatever. Make that relationship. We meet every year with our first responders, and this fall we're going to be doing an active shooter training for our staff. That's going to be one of our in-service days where our first responders will be there, sheriff's office will be there, and we're going to take our entire staff. What would you do? What would the situation feel like if we actually had a shooter? What would you do? And why I feel really sad to have to do that, I know it's one of those things that I have to do because they are in charge of those kids. Because we can say all we want about, I have this training or that training, but if that would happen, they're going to look at that teacher and say, what do you want me to do? Our staff and our kids know how to barricade a door. We got to get better at that, but they know how to barricade their door. They know how to use a belt to put around the door handle. to make sure that they could hold it if somebody's trying to get in. We have codes with our first responders. You don't knock on a door and just come in. There's codes. So we have all that.
The other thing that Brent and I have talked about, while we're doing all this training in the school, we have to start thinking about training our community too. I talked to the gentleman who was the superintendent at Chardon, who now talks about this stuff because they had an active shooter in their school. And I get texts and phone calls immediately whenever anything happens at the school, because kids are all connected now. And we have to train our community too as to, if a situation like this happens, where do you go? How will we communicate to you that your child is safe? So that's another piece that we have to put together with this too as well, to train our parents as to what's the right thing to do if something were to happen.
The reunification of families is the hardest thing in a crisis. And we've heard that over and over and over again. And unfortunately, we saw that locally as well this past school year. How do I get my kid? And then what do you do if you're told you can't get your kid? It's going to take a while. What do we do? And can I pick my kid up if I don't have my license? Can I take my neighbor kid? All those things we got to work through. The county, and I have to, really commend the county, Judge Haddock and the office over there, because they were able to work with our local legislators in order to get this levy on the ballot on August 7th. We can talk about state testing all we want, but until we get this right, the state testing is not going to matter. Because if we don't get kids healthy, they can't learn. They can't. So Joe and his team were able to get this for August 7th. They put together the county task force. They brought in Sandy Hook. They brought, when we sit around and we meet on this stuff, you have all the law enforcement, and then over here you have all the mental health organizations locally that are there. For the first time, everybody's in the same room. And in order for this problem, for us to start and continue to work through it, everybody's got to be in the same room. There can't be silos. There just can't be. Because it doesn't matter if you live in Plano. If you walk through Glen Oak High School on a normal day, you'll probably see a Hoover jacket, a Jackson jacket, maybe a Lake jacket. But those are all kids that come over to our school to take classes that are from all those other school districts. And that's okay. But those kids, and the importance of this levy is, it doesn't matter if it's a Plain kid or any other kid. What are we going to do to protect them and keep them safe and get them and their families hopefully access to services that maybe they need? So I believe that this issue on August 7th doesn't have boundaries. But that's my opinion. Okay.
Well, and it's also important, and why are we on the ballot and why is there an issue? If you don't know about school funding in Ohio, I'll be happy to talk to you anytime about it and how inadequate it is and disproportionate it is. But schools are now being asked to do all of these things. And where is that money going to come from unless we find some other way? It's going to come out of the classroom. I mean, we're committed to keeping our kids safe no matter what, but this levy will provide us with the means to help them more in the ways that we're being called on now to help.
They have told us, the experts, and then we're going to be done and we'll be glad to take questions. The experts have told us from the CDC, Center for Disease Control and others, this problem is not going to go away. What worries me the most is August and September, because even though school may be only 9 months, these issues, they're taking place all the time. So how do we close the information gap? Sometimes, right, June, July, and August. Because what's going to come back to school and what the issues are that are going to come back to school in August and September, we're going to have to deal with those. And so we have to have the resources in order to do that. And quite honestly, for our teachers, I start teaching 4th grade. When you say to a teacher, about classroom management, discipline in classroom, well, they're saying, well, what do you want me to do? 1 in 3 kids, or either 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 kids in Stark County now are hungry. You're talking about a mental health concern that a child or a family may have. It's about 1 out of 3. That classroom looks so different than it did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And our teachers need to be equipped with the training and the resources to help those kids. So if it's not us, then who's going to take care of these kids? Because if we don't, then our future is going to look a little different than what it should. So that's what's coming on August 7th. We believe, and I believe it's the most important thing we're dealing with right now in education. And I believe as a community and someone who lives here, we're at a crossroads. I really honestly believe that with our kids and our families. And we have to do something. 15 suicides. When I say that, it's heartbreaking. So we have to do something. So with that, we'll take questions. Yes, sir.
First of all, I want to commend Plain Local for the programs you've initiated and the programs you're planning there. My question is, where are the other school districts? Are they following a similar path? Are they lagging behind or very reluctant? Or where are the other school districts in the county here?
Yeah. Thank you, and it's a good question. I think everybody's at various points. I can tell you that every school district signed up, most school districts, I should say, signed up for the Sandy Hook Promise. Most school districts signed up for some type of system to allow first responders in a school district to talk, everybody talk. So I think everybody's getting on board. Everybody's at different spots, to be honest with you.
And I would encourage any of you who don't live in Plain to go to your local school board meeting and ask, where are you at with these things? If this levy passes, what is your plan? What are you going to do? Because you should get those answers if you're not living in our school district. I like to think we're leaders in the area, but we've got, many good school districts with good leadership throughout this county.
How much
Yeah, John, you mentioned that the schools are being asked to do more and more. And that was my thought just coming here tonight. Thinking about you guys and what you're being asked to do. Last time I checked, there were still 24 hours in a day. And my kids are at school 6-7 hours. That leaves another 18 hours to cover. Now, is the school responsible for those 18 hours? We have a Republican administration in Columbus that is not funding our local communities. They've pulled the money back. We know that. That's hurting our schools. We have a broken healthcare system. You talked about all the students you've taken over to Altman. Is the fact that a lot of insurances don't cover mental health and that there's no mental health services available? I'm just concerned that our schools are being asked to be a crucible to mend all of our society's ills when you only have the kids 6 or 7 hours a day.
Number one, I wouldn't disagree with you, but when you say 6 or 7 hours a day, if you go over to Glen Oak High School during the school year or even now, that building is constantly in use. There are kids and families there, and we also have the Stark County District Library. They're there a lot more than 6 or 7 hours. And as Brent already said, if not us, who? We feel responsible for the kids that are under our care in our community. And if no one else is going to do it, we've decided in Stark County, we need to do something. We can't just sit back and wait for the people who have already taken the money away from local government and schools to do it. They basically have told us, you've got to do this in your community. So we're not going to sit back and let things happen. We feel we need to act.
Yeah, John, and you mentioned, those of us who are older remembering the duck and cover drills. I grew up on the east side of Cleveland near Lake Erie, and my dad would take me and my brother out at night, and we'd watch Sputnik go over. the schedule would be published in the paper up there. And then I looked around, and all the parents would be leaving, going up to the elementary school for the PTA meeting. What were they doing? They were demanding that they saw Sputnik, they saw a visible threat over them. They were demanding that math and science be taught in our schools to their children. So it engaged, it was something that catalyzed the involvement of the parents. So what I'd like to see is, you talked about the contracts, the more deputies. If we vote for this, there's a potential that we could be arming teachers in some schools, even though we're not going to, you're against that in Plain. The monies that we're going to be paying could be arming other teachers in other systems. And, I'd like to see more parental involvement somehow,
So would I, but.
So would I, yeah, Will would.
But that's another issue, and it's a societal issue.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It's to your point about 6 or 7 hours a day. We have before school care and after school care in our elementary buildings. So we have parents that drop off their kids at 6:30, and they can pick them up at 6 at night. This summer we have 8 different sites in our community where we daily, Monday through Friday, take food out and feed the kids. So what we do is we take the food out, and then we grab the parents, and we may take some books out, and so while we're feeding them, we can say, hey, here's a book for you. But what we're trying to do, to your point, is connect that back so when school starts, that everybody feels comfortable with the schools. Because if we don't feed them over the summer, they're not going to eat. And if you go up to high school any day over the summer, around noon, you'll see anywhere from 100 to 400 or 500 people in there eating. Because it's a feeding site open to the community. So you're right, as far as sitting in a classroom, but those hours, either before school hours or after school hours, are critical, because that's really when that relationship building with our community starts and ends. So I just want to say that.
And that's why when we built the new Glen Oak High School, we considered it a community center and a community asset. From the walking track to the public library, to the fact that we had Mercy Medical, and now we're going to have child and adolescent services there. It is an asset to the community.
I have a couple questions. One of my questions is, when you got together with the mental health services and the school board, did you bring any students to the table to get their input, because it's something that they're facing on a daily basis?
And that's a good question. That really was from the survey, because while we said we knew, or we thought we knew, what the face of mental health looked like in Plain Local, until the kids filled out the survey, now we know. So some of those statistics I gave you, I'm not proud of, but it is what we're dealing with. Some of the other survey questions dealt with family situations, drug use, substance use. Are you involved in extracurricular activity at school? Do you feel connected to your school? Do you feel connected to your teachers? So we feel, from the student standpoint, at least 85% of them that filled it out, we have a better idea today than we did a week ago what our kids actually think, because it was anonymous, and now we know better.
But I think that's a very good point, is we see what's happened to energized kids across the country, that we have to involve them more in the decisions that we're making, because it directly affects them. And in Plain, we have a couple of kids that come to every school board meeting and report on what's going on in the school and let the board know what's going on. So I think that's a very good and fair point.
Yeah, I actually, Columbine happened my junior year of high school, and I saw the change just from my junior year to my senior year, and I know that the schools, the way they operate, everything's changed so much just in the time frame. So I think it's hard sometimes, being not experiencing what they are, to know
Right.
what they're going through without approaching them.
You're right.
I've been working the polls for the past year and a half, and when I got my notice for August 8th, I had no idea what the issue was. And a couple weeks ago, got into a conversation with my friends. They didn't know either. And since then, as I do my schedule and make appointments ahead, you know, I'm always trying to work around that. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that have no clue. So what are you doing to get the word out? That's why I'm here tonight, because I'm going to be doing voter registration, and I'm sure I'm going to get questions.
What is this, right?
Yeah.
And just real quick,
Sure.
is there a reason why it's a separate levy? I mean, that we're voting in August as opposed to
Yeah.
November? What's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, it was written as a special election because of the need is so severe. It has to get on there so we can start to do what we need to do. Answer.
And we moved quickly because the law that allowed this was just passed this last year in Ohio. So we felt we needed to move as quickly as possible with everything that's happening.
And the county.
Funding on that,
Also,
if you do it in
we're
August.
not going to have as many people
We get
show up.
paid, we will get money from it in January.
Correct.
But if you wait until the general election, it'll be a year.
Wow.
Or two. But- So that's why there was this rush.
That's important to get that out, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, we did have people here when we first came that make phone calls from 3 to 7. Has there been any thought to create a phone bank so people know more about this issue? I didn't know anything about it.
I didn't know anything until this week.
Yeah.
I consider myself pretty up to date on it.
Sure, right?
Why hasn't our newspaper had anything?
There was.
There has.
There has been.
Okay, because as of a couple weeks ago,
No, in
nobody's
the rep.
seen anything.
I believe it might have been Monday in the rep or Tuesday.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many people
Yes, it has.
don't get the repository and they know nothing about this whole thing. I can name 3 of my neighbors that don't even know this levy's on. And I have a question.
Sure.
Why 16 special election with only 90 days to the general election? Why you do it?
I think Mary answered that question. If we don't go with this special election, then we have to wait a whole nother year if we go on the general election to get those funds. That's the reason.
So I want to get back to what you asked me. So I know that the paper has done some reporting. I know that there is a website that's now out for it, and
We have a video
been-
that I
there's been
just
2
saw.
articles in the repository.
Okay.
The first one and the one this week. That's all that's been in there.
Well, I know the repository photographer is here tonight.
I knew he was here too.
it's Keep Kids Safe. That's the tagline. Keep Kids Safe.
.com?
I'll tell you in a minute, okay? As soon as John starts talking, I'll look. So I'll check it. And then the other thing is there's mailers that are going to be going home to all residents about what this is. So the campaign has just really
In Starr County?
started to pick up. Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. Okay.
Along the same lines of the discussion we've had, the information you presented this evening has been a very effective argument in support of this issue. I'm familiar with the articles that were in the repository, and they're lame by comparison. Is there an opportunity, or could there be an opportunity for you folks to do an op-ed presenting the information you did tonight? Because, you know, that particularly, you know, your opening in terms of the severity of the incident here, that is a tremendously effective reason there why we need this levy.
Sure. Well, what I'll do, and I think you're right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to contact Joe Chatta and ask him if he would like.
He's the county
The
superintendent.
county superintendent, I'm sorry, with me or separate from me to do something to the paper. And he may have that already planned. Okay, I don't know that. So, Mary, you may know.
He does, but you have a retired judge who is working actively on it to have a presentation available, and I just would wish they would do that faster too, to get it out to you. I understand your concern. I would be too.
I was going to say,
Can the different schools have the website on their own school websites? Because I've been to the websites of many of the different schools that are part of this levy, and there's nothing there. You can't find anything out about it. And I know you have some parameters you can and can't do during levy campaigns. Is there an opportunity at least to put the website up there for more information?
And I'll make that recommendation to Joe. We linked it today on Facebook, Twitter, from our website. So it is on there, but yes.
And I want to say, I'm from Marlington School District, and I do know 80% of the residents in Marlington do not have children in the district. No longer have children, 80%. And we're less than a month out from this election, August 7th. I didn't know that there was a special election asking for this additional, which I understand is a permanent levy. So I came here because my neighbors trust what I tell them or information I can impart to them. And sometimes they'll say, good, I'm glad, Kathleen, you said that, so I can go and vote no. And I say, no, don't go vote no. So your argument, I think, is a good one when we think in terms of these are children's lives, these are families and grandparents. And so I can take it back and say to my 80% of my residents but these are our grandchildren, these are our children, and I'm pleased to see the mental health being addressed because these children are coming to school with toxic stress, and that's not addressed. And our schools should reflect the community. So I'd like to see more diversity in the buildings, and the children would like to see that as well. And additional counselors. Our children don't really need to see more strong arm security because they're already traumatized. What they need to have is a go-to person. I'm glad you said about Officer Chad Smith, because the children need someone that they can confide on. And oftentimes children's minds run that they think of it today, and 2 minutes later, they forgot what it was. It was important because as teachers, we say, oh no, just 1 minute, just 1 minute. They've forgotten, and you've forgotten that child had something. So I appreciate you coming here. It's good to see you.
Well, absolutely. And
80% of us.
And you can ask Connie how quickly we responded. Brent or I will be happy to come speak to any group based on our availability, and I'll pretty much make myself available whenever I'm around to help educate anybody who wants to know about it.
Yes, sir.
All right, so a couple of things. Along the lines of getting the word out, and just in general, I want to point out that this Saturday at 10 o'clock, people will be meeting here to canvass for Lorraine Wilburn for House 48 and Ken Harbaugh for District 7. So that might be an opportunity for us to distribute some literature on this and talk to people. Also, anybody who's here who wants to show up and do that, please feel free to come on out. And I wanted to ask, I heard you speak earlier, and I've read about this, I'm no expert, but I'm familiar with the idea that metal detectors are super expensive and inefficient. But I heard the idea of wands. I mean, how much cheaper is that, and is it really more efficient? Doesn't it take longer to swipe somebody with a wand than it does to walk through it?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you asked because, as a parent, I'm sitting there thinking of my little guy, walking through their metal detector being wand. So,
And who's going to do that?
And who's going to do that? So, I'm going to get back to what you asked me. Cleveland Public Schools have metal detectors. Last school year, they had 7 or 8 guns that got into schools because people will find other ways to get in. Okay. The other thing is, and Joe Chad, County Superintendent, provided us with this information. Don't quote me on this number, but it's anywhere between $5,000 and $6,000 for one standing metal detector. Okay, the wands are about anywhere from $99 to like $140. The problem with the metal detectors, if you look at Glen Oak High School, is there's 48 doors. Okay, so And the other thing is, let's say we had, look, 2 points of entry into a school, which is probably one too many. So 1 point of entry, all those kids going into the doors, and then that goes off. Then you have, for us, it's about 1,900 kids. They don't all come through the same door because they drive, whatever. What do you do with all those kids? And what law enforcement said is, while they're all waiting out there, they're now targets.
Right.
The other thing is, when that goes off, what do you do? And if like an airport, when you go through, we've all gone through and, you know, we've had all those fun things happen. They take you to the side, you go meet some new people, they do things, you know, so who's going to do that? So that's the issue with that. I mean, I understand. The wands, to me, we can use at all events too. And that's the other thing with Meadow Tip. We can do a basketball game, football game, you know, whatever. So at any event that we have, if I believe that, you know, somebody's a threat, or let's say we get some information, then we start to want people, we start to pull people off to the side, whatever we need to do to keep our community safe. That's how I see it.
I was just a few minutes late. Did
Yeah.
you say, are you going to buy wands for all the schools?
Yes, ma'am.
I missed that.
Yes, ma'am.
So sorry I was late. And you're going to wand all the kids every
No,
morning?
that's not what I said.
Okay. I just
No.
was clarifying.
No, I'm glad you're clarifying.
Because I was late and I knew I missed some information.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Hey. They would be available.
Okay.
And let's say we got
To who? The
Law
the
enforcement.
staff that are there?
law enforcement or administration only. Say we got a tip at 4 o'clock in the morning, came through on a tip line. Well, then we may have to get to who we need to get to and make sure that they're safe.
I'm just thinking my kindergarten.
I know.
Wanded
I'm with you.
As they walk through the door.
We are not planning to have each school in August. No.
I understand.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
We grew up in Plain. We raised 2 children in Plain. We now live in North Canton, and I taught at Lake for 27 of my 30 years.
Wow.
Why did you go for a permanent levy? Why did you not just go for like maybe a 5-year, see what the people think, let them digest it, get their input, and then go from there? That's my first question.
I'm glad you asked. I don't know if you want me to ask.
Well, go ahead, but once again, too, Mary's here from the county as well, and you could probably speak to it as well, because it's a county initiative that school boards locally join.
Okay, now you're asking
Why a permanent levy?
why a permanent levy.
Yes,
Normally, I'm against that.
and most people
However,
are.
isn't a 1.49, which is very little compared to 5, 10, or 15. And if we put a time limit on it, let's say 5 years, that it have to come up for a vote again. What if the atmosphere has changed somewhat and the projected money has been dropped? All the money that has been put into the program and the people, the personnel, the police and whatnot to come in have to slowly begin to diminish. And so we felt, and most of us felt that continuing would at least guarantee a measure of success. I know.
I'm in a lot of communities, and I also have a lot of friends in the Summit County League of Women Voters who are nonpartisan. But I just know permanent levy. People are going to hear that, and that's tough to swallow, especially when we just passed a levy in North Canton. And Perry was the one that had all these people come in when they had all those suicides, and they're not in this group of people. So what are they doing that you're not doing in the other schools that are in this? What are they doing differently that they don't need to be in it, along with, I think it's Canton City and
There's a
Campbell?
fair number that have chosen not to do this, and I'm curious about that as well.
Yes, what are they doing?
Dalton, Canton City.
It's hard for us to
Perry, you
answer
can't really answer
for
that.
another school
It's a
board.
local,
That's a local.
every school board had their choice. That's the best way I can answer it. I'm glad you asked the continuous question, because that's the elephant in the room. Yeah, I get it.
Was there anybody here who doesn't think this is a permanent problem? I mean, quite frankly, that's my point of view. This is a permanent problem. It's not going away, and it's gotten worse and worse as I've seen my kids, my son who's 31, my oldest, my daughter who's now 18. There's a world of difference, as Brent said, of what's happened in the last 13 years, and it's only gotten worse. It's not gotten better, and I don't see it getting better with what's been happening in our communities.
And I don't know who's going to come to, I don't know who's going to answer the call, so to speak, to help these kids. I don't. And, you know, there will be a new governor soon. I don't know what he or she will do to school funding. The track record's not real strong. So, and I agree with John 100%. The problem isn't going away. It's not going to be different, or it's not going to go away in 5, 10, or 15 years. It's just not.
So you said, oh, go ahead.
One at a
My
time.
question is, there's 14 districts apparently on the ballot. So I was told that if half of them have to pass in order, and everyone will have to vote for it. Plain local is not my district, but if my district fails and everybody else's passes, I will still have to pay that. That's what I'm under the assumption.
It's a majority vote of all the school districts that are in
On the levy.
on the levy.
Correct.
Right.
That's right.
Now, that doesn't seem fair to me, that if my district chooses not to pass it, then we're going to get stuck paying for it. And that was one of the reasons Kansas City opted out of it.
I think you're going to have a lot of lawsuits if that happens.
And my other concern was, we're taking care of the kids in the buildings, but how many of your students are on the football field, the soccer field, the track field? How are they going, after school, they even go out there to the field, so how are they going to be protected? Because if somebody is bent on getting in there to cause problems, they know where they can go, and those kids are sitting ducks.
Yeah.
Schools, they weren't constructed right as prisons, Lynn, you know this. And we know, most people know where the soft targets are. But at the same time, you know, how are we going to keep them safe? Well, I can tell you now, after hours at Glen Oak High School, we have a deputy on site until about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. All right, we do that now. So it's vigilance. It's with our kids. I don't know. I have the same concerns if I go out to eat, go to a movie, to be 100% honest.
Yeah.
You know, because you're constantly looking at who's around you. I mean, you think differently now when you go out to eat.
Right. Whenever you leave your house, you're at risk, a higher risk to die, just
I know that doesn't
probability.
answer your question, but that's my honest feedback on that.
But you're going to have a lot of money if it passes. Your district will have so much money that's allotted to plain local.
No,
You're
your
going to
district
use that-
will too.
Are you going to use up all that money
Her
the
district
first
will
year?
have
Because the
money,
next
too.
year, you're going to have that same money coming in because it's a permanent levy. I firmly believe it should have been a 5-year. And if it works and we see changes, then go back to the voters, because the voters are going to say it worked for the first 5 years, so let's continue this to keep going.
They might just as well say, well, nothing happened in the first 5 years, let's stop
Yeah,
paying.
so we don't
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah, I think the programs and the staff and different things like that we're going to do, those costs are going to continue to be there. And there's things that none of us are probably even thinking are going to be on the horizon.
And a lot of the costs are in people. It's not, people costs don't go away. It's not, you know, we're going to buy wands. You know, not a lot of the cost is in capital stuff. Some of it will be. But once again, I'm going to say it's very important that we have more mental health options for our kids, more counselors, those costs need to be invested in our kids, and that's not going to go away.
Do you know if other districts that are in this levy request have also done surveys of their students? And if so, were their results as shocking and concerning as Plains?
I know many school districts made a decision to do the survey. I don't know if everyone did. I don't know. We have not seen their results, and
Did someone come in and do the survey for you? Was it?
CDC did.
Oh, the CDC did it. Okay.
And right now, all of that information and data is it's still an open investigation. The Center for Disease Control still has an open investigation, and until that's closed, all the information is protected because we're dealing with kids and scenarios and
So that was
situations.
a countywide study that also involved Kansas City, Perry.
If they chose to
Alliance.
participate.
Oh, if they chose to
Yeah.
participate.
Again, it was all
In
local.
the CDC. They could have participated in the CDC study, but then chose not to become part of the levy.
They could have, but they didn't have any of those results
Yeah.
yet.
And I want to come back to this again. If even one school tragedy is averted, and if even one life is saved, do we want to argue about money and the permanency of a levy if we save even one child's life and what that life is worth? This isn't, it's a different kind of conversation that we're having today. It's not the same old conversation about levies. This is about children and their future and the future of our community and our nation. It's not just about, I get very upset sometimes when I hear people try to put a price tag on a child's life.
Just a quick question. So you said you were sending mailings out. Is that going to all Plain local community members,
Yes.
or just the parents?
It's going to, I believe it's going to the whole community.
Is that a countywide thing?
That is a
Brent?
countywide
It's a countywide for
Yes.
all the districts that are participating.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important to talk to my neighbor that has no kids in school, but I do, so.
On the ballot, there is a mention of a committee. If it passes, let's say it passes, on the ballot it says there's a committee that's going to make recommendations to the individual school district.
Yeah.
And there's no details there about what that committee is. Was it put together by the school board? What's the mechanism of those recommendations?
I believe that's that county task force that I started with.
Okay.
Where we had FBI, law enforcement, Homeland Security, those people. They're the ones who made the recommendations.
Okay.
Then it's up to the school districts if they want to adopt them or not.
Okay.
And my feeling is, if the FBI is there in the room and Homeland Security, they have a pretty good feel for what we should do. How do we keep our kids safe?
Are mental health professionals also on it?
And they're also there.
Okay.
Okay.
And John Aller, Mental Health Board, those folks, they were all at the table. Yes?
I'm wondering a lot because of my experiences. Why didn't you do research into what Perry Local, Canton City, and Canton Local, especially Perry, because I believe that's why the CDC came to Stark County. At least that's what I was told when I attended a meeting in Summit County for the League of Women Voters. There was a professor from Ohio State and another gentleman who wrote a book called Life Rage, who was a policeman for 20 years. And they told us a little bit about what happened in Perry, but why don't you also bring that to the table to compare what what the group here, the district is doing versus the ones that did not join the consortium or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah. We have been in meetings where everybody has received the same information. I can't speak for those districts. I don't know why they chose not to go. Okay.
So it's up to me to find out in the summer before August 7th. as to why Perry's not in it, Canton Local and Canton City, when most people are out of the building in July,
Yeah, I mean, I can't,
or the repository.
I can't speak to that.
Respond in a way, the opponents of this will be very, very vocal, and you'll hear all of the reasons against it from the opponents, rest assured there. So you won't have to dig too hard, because that's the nature of the opposition to issues of this sort there, that they'll be vocal. A lot of the issues that they will present will be total BS, but you're going to hear them all.
Here's what I can tell you. 15 kids have died. I've been in the homes the day of and the day after a kid has took their own life. Okay? That's all I need.
Yeah.
Okay? That's all I need. I've sat in a living room with a mom and you know, Brent, what do you want me to do? You know, I've seen it just absolutely tear apart families. 15 kids. We've lost 15 kids in a year in this community. You gotta be kidding me. What is wrong? What do we need to do? What aren't we doing? What questions aren't we asking? What conversations aren't we having to help these kids? We have kids taking their own lives. My kid's age. To me, that's enough. I live in a community, nobody wants to pay more. I get it. But if we don't do something, if we don't help, what is our future going to look like? Because this cycle is going to continue to repeat itself. This money can't go towards administration, okay? It can go towards law enforcement, counselors, mental health, and programs and systems like we talked about here tonight to help keep schools safer. That's what it can go for.
And to help kids.
And to help kids. I mean, I don't know. Yes?
So you say you're more concerned about mental health right now. So the counselors that are already in place at the high school, middle schools, and elementary, are they going to be trained to take on more of a bigger role in counseling and not testing as they do? As part of this equation?
I know what you're asking. Yeah. I know what you're asking.
No, I've been there.
So have I.
I've campaigned for
So have I.
how many levies?
I'm a retired teacher,
Since
too.
1977. I've been door to door. I've done it all.
And what
That's
you're
why I'm sitting here with all these
yeah.
questions.
What you're asking is $1 million question, right?
Yep.
Because if I could wave my magic wand and have less testing and less suicides and more parent involvement and more money, I'd do it today. I'd do it right now. But the reality is, I can't. The testing's not going away. The mental health issues aren't going away, and the safety concerns aren't going away. They're not going away. Do I know how we're going to handle all of that? I have a pretty good idea. I have a plan, and I believe it's going to work to a point. We're going to launch a critical care team next year. So if I get a call at 2 a.m. that so-and-so is thinking about committing suicide or thinking about coming to school tomorrow with a gun, we have a critical care team that's going to go out to that house at that point and deal with that. Okay? These demands are not going away. The legislators aren't going to fix it. So it's on us. That's the best answer and the most honest answer I can give.
I think you hit on two really important points that you didn't emphasize enough. If you can go back to that Jackson young man at the middle school, which was baffling to me because, well, the information came out so slowly after. But it was clear that he had a long rifle. Somehow he got on the bus. He was with other kids at the bus stop with a long rifle, either down his pants or hidden in his jacket somehow. So what you said about the bus driver training, that was the thing that went off in my head when that happened. Where was the bus driver when this kid got on the bus, you know? Then you mentioned the social media, and as we got into that young boy's social media, he had written a manifesto, if you will, on his cell phone. And basically it said that he was going to be bigger than Columbine, that he would have more followers, and he used the B word, I will have more followers than all the Bs in this school. That indicated to me that that boy was being bullied or teased because he didn't have as many followers on social media as some other kids, and maybe, you know, the girls were teasing him or something was going on. So what you said about the social media, I have friends in Jackson Township, and they tell me when their kids come home, they try to talk to them, the kids won't talk. You know, so if the parents can't talk with the kids, and you have to do it at the school, then a couple days later, there were the teenagers that were a boy and a girl that were in the woods, and they killed themselves. And then it came out that there had been a one-year program of suicide prevention prior to that. So this was all just like a head-scratching like episode for us, you know?
And it's going to take everybody. I mean, that's why I'm so grateful to be here tonight. You know, here's what I would tell parents too, to your point. Get on your kid's phone. Okay, number one, know their password and get on. And if you don't know how to use Snapchat, figure it out. And two, go in their bedroom. Because in order for us to adequately start to impact our communities, it's going to take all of us. Because you're right, no one can do it, not even us parents. I mean, sometimes we feel like we can't do it.
Right.
But get on their phone. They all have to go to sleep at some point. But I think. I don't know. Some days I don't know. But, you know, the number of kids who have their phones with them all night, ding, 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 all night, and they wake up. They get about 3.5 hours of sleep. That's totally interrupted. Then they go to school, and the next day they're not ready to learn. The phone out of the room, get on it, see what's going on. And go in their room and see what's around.
One of the biggest problems, as I have seen it, and I've been an educator in various realms for over years, is when the parents decided they wanted to be their children's friends rather than be the parents. And I think we've just sort of lost this balance of what is the adult in the room for? You know, you got to set limits for crying out loud. You got to understand what they're doing. And so part of this program, I think we need more help for parents, you know. However we do that, I don't know. But
I would agree with that.
they need help. They don't know what they're doing.
And it's not, they're not at fault, but they don't know. And we as parents sometimes, even in being in it every day, I just don't have the answer for my 16-year-old. I don't know if anybody does right for him.
Yeah.
Why are students permitted to have their phones on and with them during class time?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for showing us.
Running out of here.
I'll help Brent out a little bit on this, because if we, first of all, it can be an educational tool too. But secondly, if we took that ability away, you know who would be the first one screaming at us? Not the kids, the parents.
Yeah.
Okay?
Let them scream. Right.
No.
Stand up to the parents. Stand up to them for once.
Right.
To the parents.
Well,
I know they passed the levy.
listen, I've stood up to parents more than once.
It's hard, especially when they're passing.
But it is an educational tool as well.
If something happens, you want to be able to reach that child and have that child reach you.
That's the big thing that parents want.
But what happened when we were in school?
It's an entirely different
Office call, and we survived.
When I went to school,
Social media.
I got in trouble when I got home.
Yeah, right.
But you're also right, you also, as a retired teacher, you use a phone now as an educational tool. So it's.
So we are great at blaming the school for problems that we as parents have created.
Right.
There's no prayer in the schools, that's why the world's gone to hell. Well, where's the prayer in the homes? You know, the kids are totally undisciplined in the schools, let them get away with murder. Now, damn it, we as parents do. So, like I say, I want to punch out, and I'm actually on my church board, and I'm also on the parochial school board there. So I, believe in prayer in schools, but any parent who bitches to me about lack of prayer in schools, the first thing I ask them is, how often do you pray at home? And every damn one of them shut up at that point. And we have, there are problems in our society with our young people. I've been a political activist for almost 50 years. We always blame the schools. Well, it's not the schools, damn it, it's our fault. We have problems with the schools, it's our fault. And this is one example where we have to step up and support the schools. They're working for us, but we're too damn lazy to be parents that effectively train our kids because we get the schools to do it. I don't have to do that. The schools do that.
Yeah, you guys should
have to
use my
take it
6-hour
over, too.
thing.
Oh.
When the parents come at you, say, hey, we only got 6 hours, you got
Poor
it.
Kara here has been raising her hand.
I have a 9-year-old with autism, and I know there's a big stigma around these school shootings, and some of these children have autism. One of my big questions is the funding for mental health will go toward helping children with special needs, and in turn, will funding for IDEA possibly help in those services?
The funding, as long as it's earmarked, as long as the funding is used on the mental health and the safety security side, those, I think, 4 buckets I gave you. If it's not used for those, then it can't go for something else. Okay? So if students with autism or any type of disability are in those programs, they'll be in just like anybody else.
Well, I learned about the blue strobe light tonight when I returned my library books at Glen Oak. When you pull up in the afternoon, there's a guy at the driveway, and he asks you if you're picking up a student. And I say, no, I'm dropping off a library book or something, going to the library. He lets you in. But I had no idea about that there could be a blue strobe that I could see when I came to the library.
Like I said, we need to educate our community.
Yes, I agree.
Do you have any of that education in place by the school year? Like for parents, like educating, like you were talking about, reaching out to the parents, any of that? I know it's really quick turnaround.
No. I think what I'm hearing tonight, I think a couple things. One is in our publication that we sent out at the beginning of the year, that everybody reads because it has the bell time. Everybody reads it. Put in there some of the things we talked about tonight. But I think the other thing is that I found most effective is maybe just having some meetings at schools and just come around and talk like this. I've done that a few times. It's been the best way to talk with them.
And we had, I don't know if any of you were there, we had a mental health night at Glen Oak High School, which was extremely informative. And it was amazing to me some of the questions that we heard that night from parents, but it was a good evening. So we need to do more of that.
I'd love to do that. 'Cause
I think it has to be constant.
Yeah.
And this is what works, a small set.
Like at each other and share it and each.
Yeah. I think the other thing is, I'm going to get to your question. I don't want anyone leaving here tonight thinking that I don't have faith or we don't think we have good kids. We have good kids, great kids. I mean, the things that our kids are doing in this community service projects, how they're performing on whatever stage or athletic fit you want to get, I think that's what drives all of us to do what we're doing. We have great kids we have a great community, but we got to keep it great. And I think the reason that we're all here tonight is how are we going to do that and how are we going to keep helping these kids. But I have great hope in our youth. I do. I believe in our kids. But I also believe right now they need a little help. Yes, ma'am.
We just have to agree to disagree.
That's okay.
Permanent.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's good.
That's okay.
So what part of either Sandy Hook Promise or of this levy is parent education? Because there's a quote that I love that says, education is a reflection of society. It can never be better than society. Education is a reflection of society. It can never be better than society. So what part of this is parental education? Either Sandy Hook or the levy?
Yeah, I would hope it's a big part in all those buckets we talked about.
But, if you're going to sell this thing, you got to tell people who have questions like me about
Well, I laid out exactly what we're doing in plan, okay? But I don't know what district, I don't want to know. You need to go ask them.
Then go to North Canton and ask.
Okay?
I do, believe me.
We have a plan. I think it's a good plan. Is it perfect? I'm sure it's not, because nothing's perfect.
But see, it's not segregated. All these districts have to, they're all in this pot together.
Yeah, but each district will make their own decisions
Right.
on what they will do.
I won't say the P word, on this levy that all but 3 districts or whatever are in. So you don't know what part that Plain is doing on the parental education that they could share with us tonight, that you can share with us tonight.
Here's what I can tell you. I'm gonna inform the parents, and we've done that throughout the year. We need to inform the parents on what mental health services are in Plain and how they can access them 24/7, 365. Because this doesn't stop when school's out on May 30th. I'm going to inform them about what our SRO, school deputies, what are they doing in our schools, and how can you access them, how can you talk to them. They're talking about all the systems we talked about tonight, the blue strobes, the Navigate system that connects all the first responders. All that has to be information out to our public, and I can tell you that I've done that throughout the school year, okay? Having meetings, as the young lady in the back said, we had a mental health night. All that is part of the parent education. Okay, here's what I challenge all of us to. When we have those, I need people to come. That's right. Okay, and I might be speaking to the choir here. So, and I don't mean to sound contrary to you, but I don't know what North Canton's doing.
Well, we were just saying the parents that need to be there have never shown up.
But I think they will.
I hope they do.
But you have to go to them.
Yeah.
I think the parent has to communicate, and they gotta be told, communicate with your kids. Don't say, oh, you're home already?
No, they text them, are you home?
Yeah. You gotta communicate, they gotta communicate to them.
Yeah, you asked a kid how their day was good. Okay, a little bit more. Yeah. So.
I didn't raise my kids, and they learn, they come home.
You all are on the front lines every single day, and I want to thank you for that.
Yes.